of now, and it seems likely, it is the only Big 12 football job that is open. Houston Cougars decided to move off of Dana Holgorsen after a 4-8 season. That's their first year in the Big 12. So the Houston Cougars, are on the board looking for a new head coach. And there's plenty to talk about. Joining us today, two of the three hosts of our Houston podcast here in the 1012 network. It is the Scott and Holman podcast. Sam, Bobby, boys, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Phil.
Love being on.
It's always a pleasure. Sam, a many-time returning guest. Bobby, a first-timer. Always a pleasure to have. Welcome new faces here to the show. Obviously, you guys put out a fantastic episode just recapping Dana being fired, so I don't want to take too much away from that. I'm fans, listeners, please go and check out that episode. But just real quick, your thoughts just on Houston making the move to fire Dana after just one season in the Big 12.
Yeah, it was to be honest with you, it was something that I thought was a possibility, like a strong possibility, but I didn't think our leadership was going to do it. I just didn't see us moving on from Dana. And to be honest, when they said they were going to talk about it on Sunday following the game, I was like, that's kind of interesting, but I thought they were going to do the Scott Frost treatment where you tell him he's got to get rid of everybody, clean house, you can stay in. Maybe we reduce your salary just a little bit if you want to keep this job, and see how it goes from there. And they got rid of him on Sunday, and I was shocked that we moved on from him, just because I thought that he was I thought he was right when he said last year that he had an impossible effing buyout. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, it's $14.8 million. We've never been a school that just throws around money like that. We've always done more with less. And we used to compete with Big 12 teams doing less. And now we've kind of stepped onto the stage and said, let's go. We want to be one of the big dogs out here. So pretty interesting that we did let him go.
And I think to add, I think this season forced U of H's administration's hand. I don't think U of H wanted to go into this year making a change. I think they wanted Dana to just do just enough to keep his job. And then if 2024 wasn't a bowl team, then to move on. I think that was the general plan that the university leadership wanted to do. I just don't think they wanted to make a change in year one of the Big 12, but I think the results kind of forced their hand. That 9 of the conference games U of H played this year, only 3 were decided by single digits, including your 2 wins, which were by incredibly narrow margins. That down the stretch, the team didn't look competitive. And I think the 2 most damning data points were the games against your 2 former AAC compadres, Cincy and UCF. And that you didn't just lose those 2 games, you lost them, and you looked very uncompetitive. I think the game against Cincy this year is one of the most demoralizing as a Cougar fan. There's competition this year. We've got shut out for the first time in 23 years at K-State. Like, there's competition. You didn't score an offensive touchdown in your first ever Big 12 game. This game that you've been circling kind of on the calendar for years. You went out there, lost to certainly not TCU's best team of the last decade or so, and didn't score a single offensive touchdown. I mean, you saw the crowd shots. That was the vote of this fan base. It wasn't just this team is 4-5. People are going to stop showing up. I realize this is a thickler fan base, but I promise you that was more about Dana Holgorsen than it was about the team being 4-5 or 4-6 or whatever the record was when you saw those crowd shots. I think the administration realized there was just no possible way Dana Holgorsen was going to be able to realistically get this fan base back on his side. And I think you said it, Bob, you're going to eventually be paying him, whether you're paying his salary next year as head coach or paying this buyout. And I think they correctly realized that this was a pretty good market here. I don't know if they realized that Baylor was going to do something as stupid as keeping Dave Aranda around for another year and basically eliminating kind of your most direct competition for candidates. So yeah, that's kind of how we got here on this morning, talking about a Dana Holgorsen no longer led Houston Cougar football program.
Yeah. And just one more data point that I thought was interesting too, and we talked about it on the pod, is we have the 102nd ranked recruiting class. And I think that if your recruiting class is better than that, right? If you got a top 40 recruiting class, you're sneaking in even top 50. I think you can say, you know what, he's at least got the future looking right. He can maybe get a couple of portal guys who can come in here and shore up the offensive line or do something like that. But you can't be bad on the field currently and then have the 102nd ranked recruiting class in the country right now. Those two things just don't work together. And that's, like Sam said, why we're sitting here talking to you about a Dana Holgorsen less Houston Cougar football program.
Yeah, definitely feels like all these things combined lead to Dana being out more than one thing in particular. So let's look to the future. Right now, the job is open. The reports have been that they have already interviewed Jeff Traylor, UTSA head coach, twice potentially. There's talk that they're waiting to interview Willie Fritz at Tulane, who's been a hot commodity for a couple of years. Obviously, he is in the AAC championship game that we played this Saturday. Other names that have been connected to this are Barry Odom at UNLV, former Missouri head coach and Arkansas defensive coordinator, as well as Gary Patterson, who just seems to want to take jobs in the state of Texas to spite TCU for making him no longer be the head coach there. So I'm curious from you guys' perspective. Let's start with, if you had to rank those four candidates in order, and feel free to throw somebody else in if you've got somebody else you want to put it first or second in the list. Sam, let you go first this time. Where are you ranking the guys of like, this is who I think would be the right hire for Houston?
So I would say right now I have Fritz and Traylor 1 and 2, and it's a very close 1 and 2. You could almost say it's like a 1A, 1B. Really, all four of the candidates you said, I don't like them all exactly the same, but if you told me tomorrow one of those four is going to be Houston Cougar head football coach, it is infinitely preferable to what this program was looking like a week ago with Dana Holgorsen running things. So I think we did like 10. It was 10 total candidates we talked about on our post Dana pod, Bobby. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yep.
And
10.
We kind of just like, we don't like them all the same, but just like all 10 of them were like, yeah, I think that even Cliff Kingsbury, like, yeah, I think that's a better one, even though Cliff is not someone I really want. He is my 10th out of 10 of those choices. But and I would say Odom and who's it? You said, yeah, Odom and Patterson kind of in that order afterwards, but I like both of them. I've gotten to see UNLV up close and personal living out here, like that. The fact that he has them 9-3 as wizardry. I mean, that's a better resource program now than it was like 10 years ago. They have a nice on-campus facility. They have their own locker room at the Raiders Stadium. It's a more attractive job than it's been historically, but it's still UNLV football, and he's 9-3 there. I think is a really big compliment. And I know that Patterson's, I think, latter years at TCU weren't the best, but he's proven that he can win enough in the Big 12 and can do it at a place where he's not the most resource program. That I think that's attractive. But for me, it's Willie Fritz, because the guy has literally won at every level of college football he's been at. D2. Took Sam Houston to multiple FCS national championship games just an hour or so up the road from Houston. Led Georgia Southern's transition from FCS to FBS and did very well in his 2 years there, and has built Tulane into a consistent bowl team, which we were in Tulane's conference for many, many years. And that team was just a trip to New Orleans every other year and an easy win just about every time you saw them on the field. And you turned them into not just a genuinely solid program, but now winning on an unprecedented level, the modern level, or in the modern era in New Orleans. Really impressive there. Traylor, incredibly accomplished Texas high school coach, has, I think, didn't just make the jump straight from high school head coach to college head coach, got some time as an assistant there as well. I think he checks all the boxes there to win almost 40 games in 4 years at UTSA. I think once he leaves UTSA, whether that's for the U of H job or some other job, I think people are going to realize, holy shit, the job Traylor did there was really good. Like, I don't think Traylor's successor is going to win at nearly the same level. Like, that's not as resources a program as you would think for being in Texas and for the advantages there. So I would say in that order, and Traylor and Fritz, I think definitely top of the list.
Yeah, for me, I've been on the hire Willie Fritz train probably harder than anyone else has on our pod since probably 3 weeks before Dana got fired. So Fritz is a clear-cut number one for me. Guy, just like Sam says, wins everywhere he goes, has never really just been bad. And he's done it at every level. And the final level for him is P5 or P4 now, right? And I want to see him and be a part of that success that he's going to have. The big knock on him is going to be his age, right? He's 65, 63. Sorry, I get my old men confused sometimes. But he's 63. So how much longer is he going to do it? You know, there's that question. But really, when you look at it, he's the same age as a lot of successful P5 coaches. He still clearly connects with the younger recruits and things like that. He's getting a lot of talent in Tulane. And like Sam said, that Tulane program was just awful when we were students and up until Willie Fritz took over, really. So big get there for us if we are able to secure him. Traylor's going to be my number 2. I pretty much have everybody in the same order as Sam. That UTSA program is a young program, and to do what he's done there is just magnificent. The one concern that I have is he a coach who's riding on his quarterback? He's had the same quarterback every single year that he's been at UTSA. And this year, when that quarterback went down, he just, the team didn't look as good. That's when they looked the worst throughout the season. So, going to be interesting to see if you do bring him in, if he doesn't have his quarterback who can carry him. I compared it to the Jimbo Fisher, right? Jimbo Fisher made a lot of money off Jameis Winston and taking Florida State to the national title behind Jameis Winston, and Jimbo never looked really the same after he lost Jameis Winston. So that's my concern with Traylor. But Odom, like we said, to do what he's done at UNLV is something not many people have ever done at UNLV. In fact, no one may have done it at UNLV. Patterson, I don't hate the idea, but he's definitely a distant fourth for me. Those last few years at TCU, they weren't good. Those teams were not good football teams. They weren't fun to watch. They were fine. And it just feels like it's kind of a big, sexy name that you're kind of like, oh man, I can't wait. Gary Patterson. Oh man, he was so good. And everyone remembers how good his good teams were, but a lot of people forget how bad his bad teams were. And the guy's come out and said before, maybe he's changed, but that he doesn't like the idea of NIL, and he's never going to change the way he goes with NIL. And man, you have to play game in the NIL space now. So if you don't, what's going to happen if he comes in and he still is stubborn about NIL? We're right back here. We're going 4-8, and we're trying to recruit guys who already have the means necessary when they could make $1 million by going to Texas or somewhere like that.
Yeah, look, I'm in my opinion, if Houston Sunday, because it does feel like this decision will be made by the end of the weekend. If come Sunday, the reports are not that Willie Fritz or Jeff Traylor are the next head coach of the University of Houston, then I think Chris Pesman has blown it, like period. Mm-hmm. You have 2 very, very good candidates available to you that have had success and bring something to Houston that should move Houston forward in the Big 12. And if you're out here naming Barry Odom, who I'd like to see what he does after Brennan Marion is no longer his offensive coordinator,
bingo, yeah,
or Gary Patterson, who I'm not sure he's not still just an old curmudgeon who wants to just hire all of his buddies and do things the way he did at TCU and still believes that he was doing everything the right way. Like, I need a little bit of proof of concept beyond just like, no, I've changed. Like, sure. Like, if it's not Willie Fritz or Jeff Traylor, I think Pesman has screwed the pooch, and it will be his job on the line if it's not one of those 2. And I don't see how you don't get one of them, because look, Willie Fritz has been trying to get a Power 5 job. This is a Power 5 job. Jeff Traylor, I'm not sure works outside of Texas to the degree that he does inside the state of Texas. Maybe at an Oklahoma State or
Arkansas,
a school that is in very close proximity to the state of Texas. But I think he has to be in or close to the state of Texas for what he does. And I don't mean that as a gimmick. I just mean his strength lies in the state of Texas. So for Houston, I think those are the 2 guys. And if it's not one of those, it's a mistake. Now, as far as the 2 go, like, I think if you're a Houston fan, I think you guys are on the money here. Like, if either of those 2 names, you're going to be happy and should be happy with. Like, Fritz to me is Lance Leipold too. I mean, he's 4 years older.
Southern Lance Leipold, basically.
Lance Leipold, not grew up in Midwest Wisconsin. Lance Leipold has won at every level he's gone to, has had success, has taken downtrodden programs who don't have a history of success and turned them into successful programs, and is a winning football coach, and has had success at the program he is at in Tulane by having to replace coordinators on a regular basis, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I've had the same OC and DC this whole time. He's had to replace them because every time they have a good year, those guys get promoted. And so, like, I am perfect. I lean Jeff Traylor, because I think that given a place that's going to have the resources that Houston has, that Jeff Traylor can I've seen the quarterback argument, and that's fine. I get that, and I understand that's a question that you want answered. In my mind, like if you don't get him now, Baylor's going to next year.
Oh yeah,
and I don't mean that as a shot. Like I like Dave Aranda, but I would put money down right now that Dave Aranda will not be the head coach of Baylor University in 2025. So if you don't hire Jeff Traylor now, it's going to be shocking if he's not the head coach of Baylor come next year, unless UTSA just completely falls apart and goes 2-10. So I think you've got two fantastic candidates. I would be shocked if one of those two is not named head coach come Sunday after the interview with Willie Fritz is done after the AAC championship game. After the interview, after the AAC championship game.
Ask us how we know.
Like reminder. Well, Bobby, before we started recording, you said it yourself. Like Fritz has commented in a very unexpected way about being up for the Houston job himself already.
Yeah, it was a couple of days ago, and like I told you guys, I was surprised I didn't see this when it happened. But he was asked, like, "Hey, if you're interviewing for jobs, specifically the Houston one, have you told them that with the focus being on your players in the championship game, do you want to?" And I'm paraphrasing here, right? Like, are you going to interview after the game? Like, are you waiting till after the conference championship game to interview? And typically, as U of H fans, we've heard this question asked to our coaches, I don't know, 10,000 times, right? They typically go, no, we're focused on the university. We're focused at the task at hand, blah, 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 blah. He straight up said, yes. Like one word, are you waiting until after Sunday to interview for the job? And he said, yes. And it's like, wait a minute, you're not denying this? And it was just very clear that he's like, no, I'm going to interview for that job. And it's happening. And so, but I am going to wait till Saturday night to do it. And by that, we mean he's definitely interviewing Thursday, or at least his agent is having some discussions, I would imagine.
Yeah, if his agent's ain't good, he's like working the back channels and letting Fritz focus on the ball coaching aspects. 2 points of friction, one for each of the two guys as well. Tulane, their athletic director for a long time, Fritz's longtime boss, got the same job at Washington, and they just filled the position with somebody who is not Willie Fritz's pick. Willie Fritz wanted, I believe, the current Tulane number 2 to get the job. I think he had previous AD experience in his past and left to take the number 2 job at Tulane, which is a bigger program than he was at. Did not choose that guy, which I would imagine is at least somewhat of a source of friction here. He's negotiating with somebody who has been his boss for maybe all of like a week and a half. Traylor, I don't know the full details of it, but they had a big student referendum for a student fee that would have, I think, pretty sizably increased money going to athletics, including obviously UTSA football. And it got voted down by, I think, almost a 2-1 margin by the UTSA student body. And Traylor's not thrilled about that. You're seeing San Antonio media who are kind of tight with Traylor being like, hey, the issue here is he doesn't want to keep squeezing nickels out of it. So I think two different, not guaranteeing that those guys like want to get out, but I think two different friction points for U of H's 2 top candidates at their current schools.
And one more thing to point out, we don't know Willie Fritz's buyout because they're a private university. We do know UTSA's is $7 million, and that's a pretty sizable buyout that Houston's going to have to pay on top of the Dana Holgorsen buyout. So just one thing to look for when it comes to Traylor, a $7 million buyout after you buy out Dave Aranda. It looks different for Baylor than it does for the University of Houston, if we're just being honest with one another.
I mean, look, Fertitta's got all this money. Like, just get, they got Houston boosters. He's not the only one with money.
No, yeah.
Houston booster. He's just the mega booster for Houston, who makes a lot of decisions.
Yep.
Look, I think you've got two great options. I will be shocked if it is not Jeff Traylor or Willie Fritz named the new Houston head coach, with a press conference on Monday and the report coming out on Sunday. So obviously something to keep an eye on through the weekend. I know you guys will have plenty about this on the Scott and Holman podcast, which is available everywhere. But do me a favor, guys. Plug it away.
Yeah, so we were, like Phillip said, we are on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google. I'm sure I'm forgetting some there. We're most active on Twitter /X at SHPAWDcast, podcast.bsky.social, I believe, on Blue Sky. Yeah, no, we're all those places talking Houston Cougars. Just had a new episode coming out about the developments such as they are with this football surge, as well as everything else that is in season sports wise with the University of Houston's athletic teams. Bobby, did I miss anything?
No, sir.